Hello, my name is Aida Sijamic Wahid and I'm an associate professor of accounting here at the Rotman School of Management. My expertise is in corporate governance and board effectiveness, and I'm here to answer questions about boards of directors. This is my office hours. What exactly does a board of directors do? Well, board of directors has kind of two overarching tasks. One is to advise the CEO on any kind of issues that he or she may need advice on. That could be something along the lines of strategic direction, whether a company should expand, what companies should do about proposed merger or acquisition, or anything really where a CEO can use expert advice. The second type of tasks that board of directors do is monitor the CEO and the CEO's team. What does that mean? Well, what it means is that the board of directors is tasked with evaluating the CEO at the end of the year, determining what type of compensation plan should the CEO get, whether he or she should get a bonus. When the time comes, finding potentially a successor to the CEO, reviewing financial statements, appointing auditors, ensuring that the risk process is reviewed and followed, as well as anything else which could potentially be really material for a company, any kind of large decision. All of that has to be reviewed and approved by the board of directors. How do you even get on a board? Is there a job board somewhere posting all these director positions? Well, actually, there are many job boards that advertise director positions. Some of them are specific and cater to particular demographic, for example, to female directors or directors of particular ethnic background. Some of them are general. But for the most part, a lot of the directorships are filled through search firms. So there are search firms that specialize in recruiting directors for the boards. The other way to get a board position is the old-fashioned networking. I think that's still probably the most effective way to get on a board is to network with other directors and other executives and be an expert really in an area. So when a position opens up on a board and a board is looking for somebody with particular skill set, if everybody knows that a person is an expert in an area and they know that person through networking, he or she is much more likely to land that job. Who fires a board? How would that work? Public companies are required to have annual meetings, and at these annual meetings, directors stand for election or re-election. If a director does not get sufficient number of votes from the shareholders, he or she will be asked to render a resignation. So technically, it's the shareholders that fire the board. Board members get a salary? Really? For sitting around a few months a year and rubber stamping decisions the CEO makes? Get out of here. Well, board members do make salary, and sometimes they make really good money. So an average private company director makes somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. Average public company director in Canada makes in excess of $200,000 and $300,000 a year. It may seem like a lot of money, and it may seem like they're not doing that much, they're just rubber stamping decisions, but there's a lot more that goes on in the background. So directors have to read a lot of material, prepare for meetings, and then sit through meetings and make decisions. Now, that still takes maybe 200-300 hours a year, and it's a part-time job. However, the director pay is not all about the time they spend on the board. They also get paid because of their expertise in an area. They're usually considered one of the foremost expert in whatever area their expertise is in. The other aspect of director pay has to do with the risk the director takes when they sit on a board of organization. Anytime director sits on a board of any organization, whether non-for-profit, private, or public, they expose themselves in terms of legal risk, but also reputational risk. So anytime a company is in the news for something that they've done wrong, a scandal of any sort, it doesn't matter what the issue is, ultimately, it's always the board of directors that ends up being in the news and being held to some extent responsible for the downfall of the organization. And so it is that risk that directors are willing to take for which they get paid. How big does your company need to be to need a board of directors? There is no size requirement when it comes to board of directors. Any company, no matter how small, can have a board of directors if it chooses to. However, any company that's publicly listed on US or Canadian markets is required by law to have board of directors regardless of its size. Is there an age requirement for being a board member? It feels like most are easily in their 60s. No, there is no age requirement for being a director. However, there is experience requirement. Most directors are expected to have years, if not decades, of experience in an area. And so simply by the virtue of acquiring that experience, by the time somebody's qualified to sit on the board of directors, they tend to be in the later stages of their career and on the older side of the spectrum. With that said, it's not impossible for somebody who is a bit younger, perhaps in the 40s, occasionally even in the 30s, to make it on a board if they have really relevant experience in an area where it's really hard to find experts. Currently, that may be IT or cybersecurity risk. In that area, we do see younger board members joining corporations. How important is gender diversity on your board, really? Gender diversity, like other types of demographic diversity, are important on the board. So we have had decades of research in organizational behavior looking at what happens when teams that work together are more diverse. And from that research, we know that diversity is good because when we have more diverse group of people working together, we are less likely to fall prey to groupthink. So groupthink is a situation where a bunch of people who work together are making decisions and they all think alike. So they have certain biases in the sense that they don't consider wide range of information and perspectives, and they're more likely to make incorrect decisions or incorrect conclusions based on the information because they did not really consider full range of possibilities. And so when we have more diverse board, we're less likely to fall prey to groupthink, we're less likely to have blind spots, and that's especially true when we work in situations that require quick decision making and there's a lot of uncertainty. And boards of directors deal with uncertainty and decision making all the time. It's not necessarily the case that more diverse boards lead to better performance, but it's definitely the case that more diverse boards are less likely to have everything fall apart because they just did not foresee something. Now, the other reason why having diversity on boards is important is because we have a lot of stakeholders as an organization. That could be the employees, it could be the customers, it could be the suppliers, and all of these stakeholders look at an organization and think about, is this organization legitimate? Is it sincere in its commitment to its values? And when a board of directors is diverse and these stakeholders see somebody who looks like them on the board, they're more likely to perceive the organization as legitimate. Can you make a career out of being a director on a board? Well, technically there are directors who have 4, 5 different directorships, different boards that they sit on, and that takes a lot of time. That becomes more than a full-time job, and all of these directorships probably pay significant amount of money, so one can look at it as a career. Now, you have to keep in mind, though, that in order for somebody to get invited to sit on so many boards, they usually already have to have a successful career as an executive. They have to have experience being a director on boards. And so by the time somebody is able to make a career out of it, they've already probably had a long career, executive career, perhaps 30 years, 40 years doing something else. And at that time, they may be just looking for a career transition into being a full-time director, so to speak, on multiple boards. It's not something that's necessarily accessible to younger directors because they don't have enough experience or expertise to be invited to serve on multiple boards at a time. How was the board of directors culpable in the Enron scandal? Weren't they the ones who were misled? Well, we never quite know how much board of directors knows at any time when there is a scandal. The idea is the board should have known or should have asked the right questions to figure out something is wrong. However, when there's a scandal that's so large and it goes on for a very long time, the outsiders, whether it's the investors or general public, rightfully so ask the question, where was the board? Was the board asking the right questions? And if they were, how come they didn't figure out that something is wrong earlier? So in Enron, it's one of those cases where looking back, one has to ask themselves, how did the board not see this? Were they asking the right questions? Because if they were not, then they are culpable because it is the duty of directors to ask the right questions to exercise their duty of care. Could AI replace board members? I believe that at the current state, it's not possible, although AI could be quite useful for directors in helping them come up with perhaps better decisions. A lot of decisions that boards make are very complex and very contextual. And so AI is not necessarily at this time very good at making decisions that require consideration of particular context. And so perhaps in the future, AI is going to be more useful, but I believe that the human element that happens when it comes to decision making in a boardroom is something that cannot be replicated by AI this time. Also, a lot of decisions and discussions that happen at the board level concern future. They deal with issues that are brand new and they're complex. And so AI may not be best suited for considering issues that don't have really precedent, don't have past data. And this is where having board members who can think, big picture, think about future and imagine what future might look like for a particular organization is quite helpful. And I don't think AI can replace that. That's all for today. If you want to learn more about governance or boards of directors, click the link below to visit the Rotman Insights Hub. Thanks for watching.